Welcome, welcome to Co-Evolutionary Culturing, Composting Power Over Culture from the Inside Out, the podcast from Starter Culture. Today with myself, Sara McFarland, and Selkie Lovelock. Belle is one of the core team members of Starter Culture. She's a poet, a seer, a human development guide, a wild mind guide with Animas Valley Institute, and one who belongs very deeply to the place that she lives and works and loves, and where her children have grown up, and where her vegetables grow and her bees fly. And we spent some time talking about this thing called eco-awakening, or what we could call ecological belonging. What it is, why would we want it, what it means for these times. And we at Starter Culture are very much in a process of emergence. We are listening for what the cosmos, the mystery at the center of life, Earth, is dreaming or is speaking or longing for through us. And sometimes we have to make middle of the air changes. I'm just watching an osprey change direction in flight as I'm speaking with you here. And this podcast was kind of like that. My mic cut out a third of the way through, and so I had to listen in for a way that I might craft something of beauty and inspiration and an offering out of the really, really beautiful things that Belle was saying. And so I've added some of my own music and a poem by David White. And we're going to call this part one of Eco-Awakening. And our next podcast will be more of the practical variety of how to eco-awaken, how to know that we belong to Earth community first and foremost, experiencing ourselves as earth and water and fire and air and Kith with the other than human world. But in this podcast, we step into these waters in a more inspired, poetic, philosophical way, and kind of get the lay of the land about what eco-awakening even is. So I hope you will enjoy this exploration and wander through the wilds of what we call eco-awakening. Today on Co-Evolutionary Culturing, Composting Power Over Culture from the Inside Out. I'm noticing right now I'm really grateful to hear the birds singing in the background of your place. And I'm noticing I'm really grateful that I've been to your place. So that even though we're speaking over Zoom, I have a body memory of the place where you're sitting and the birds outside and the way your garden is laid out and you in relationship. And I'm remembering the bees right now.
They're really flying today. It's a sunny day. I was just looking out of the window at the mountain and listening to the newly arrived willow warblers. And here we are in our places. You in yours and me in mine, eh?
With my new osprey neighbors.
It's amazing.
I don't have my own children, but like I said, it's almost as if I'm pregnant or like my sister is pregnant, the kind of joy I have that they're going to be having babies there.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many faces on the mountain today. Like there are huge cumulus clouds, and then there's these shadows over the mountain, and then bright sunlight. And a bit of white because it's cold up there. Yeah. It's feeling gratitude to be here. Yeah. So, what we're here to talk about?
Aren't we already doing it?
Oh yeah, right. Eco awakening. Is that that is a phrase, isn't it? Eco awakening. I think we need to be aware of our dear listeners, and let's talk about language a bit, shall we? Mm-hmm. Say a bit about language and yeah, what might happen during this podcast with language.
Well, I'm sitting here with a poet. So language has a particular power and capacity to open worlds, spellcast, shift consciousness. Just feeling the poet of you and the seer of you. And also we were talking earlier about wanting to really be generous and kind of wide open with recognizing that not only one sort of person is going to be listening, not only poets are going to be listening to our
for sure.
podcast, rather, hopefully all kinds of different people of all kinds of different home places and all kinds of different experiences. So we had this intention, we spoke of not wanting to be kind of jargony or using special words.
Without notes.
Without notes.
Yeah. There's an expression that we might use, dear listeners, which is other than human. And the reason we use that rather than saying nature is that there's some kind of weirdness about saying I'm going out into nature, because it kind of presents itself as a separation, like as if there's somewhere other than nature to be. Like as if we're abiding somewhere that isn't nature. And of course we're on a planet which is made up of nature and we are part of nature. So we say other than human. And if we're including humans in it, we say more than human, because it's humans and everybody else. Rocks, trees, birds, caterpillars, everything.
Because humans are made of nature too.
Yeah,
we're made of earth and water and fire and air, and every breath of every ancestor of every creature that's ever lived is coming
and will ever be.
And will ever be.
Some might say. So let's be mindful of language and its ability to create stories that we then live into the world, and mindful that some people listening will be ones that would identify themselves as activists, who are direct activists, and there are some people listening who are activists because they are working towards a change in the culture, but they might not consider themselves by that term. And there might be people who don't know what the hell we're talking about and are wondering why they're listening to their podcast, and we say welcome and stay with us. That's great. Hopefully there'll be something in here for you too.
The other language moment I'd like to pick up on here is I'm remembering, because you spoke about separation and the way we make this separation of nature separate from human, or separate from indoors or houses, or as if anything is made of
shopping malls.
Nature. Everything is actually made of things of earth. And I'm remembering, because I did the storytelling this week of the hospicing modernity from Vanessa Machado de Oliveira. Her word for it is separability.
Yes.
The kind of speaking with the indigenous folk in South America that she's in relationship with, and in what we call Canada that she's in relationship with, this kind of what I might call the trauma of separation. This erroneous belief that we're separate from Earth, from the other than humans, and the loneliness that creates, and this kind of longing to belong.
Yeah.
And that might be a beautiful place to start with this funny thing called eco-awakening, which is this weird word, but actually basically sums up to mean knowing somatically, emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually that we belong.
Yeah.
And we belong to Earth and Earth community.
So in our bodies and in our feelings. Yeah, I was just thinking, if you have ever felt like you don't belong, like that you're somehow some kind of weird alien, then you'll know the loneliness that you're speaking about. And if you've ever felt a feeling of a really deeply settled and kind of profound and life-changing experience of oneness with everything, and it can be a very physical oneness. It doesn't need to be a kind of like a in the head oneness. In fact, it wouldn't be that. It would be in your body. Then you probably know what we're talking about. Eco-awakening. And it's it's a term that has come from a chap called Bill Plotkin, who has written several books, and he has, with many others, set up and created this entity called Animus Valley Institute. And eco-awakening is quite a key thing in our lives, because, now how can I say this better? What is eco-awakening? It's kind of the first experience that you feel in your body of connection with everything. So I've said that already. What I want to say is that in nature-based healthy cultures, and we don't live in one of those, they don't have eco-awakening, because it's kind of seamless. You come out of your mother's womb of belonging and you come into the womb of earth of belonging, of the apparent world, of the world that we see, the material world, if you like. And there is no separation. And everything around you, the culture around you, also affirms your belongingness. You are welcomed by trees and skies and stars and your tribe, your human tribe. So that's an important piece to get, is that in other cultures, because we tend to imagine we're the only culture on the planet and what we think is the same for everybody else, but in other cultures still existing, and cultures that we've managed to squash out of existence or destroy or are destroying, there is still this innate knowing of belonging.
Yeah. And you say our culture, so I'm just going to speak that also plainly, of what we at Starter Culture anyway are calling the power over culture. Some folks call the modern paradigm, or the
military industrial complex,
late stage capitalism, whatever the Western culture, whatever all the many different words are for that. And I think the reason you and I want to talk about this today at all is because it's sort of like a moment which becomes a practice, that it's like walking through a door that you didn't know existed, and your life is never the same after that.
And there's something about when you have been through that doorway, as you called it, or you have awakened to your place in the family of things, to quote Mary Oliver, everything changes. And so things that defined you before, such as ethnicity and gender and nationality and religion, enriching and wonderful as those are, they become secondary to this primary relationship of I am part of this great entangled complexity that is the web of life and the universe. In fact, it goes beyond Earth. It's like, so those are the two key things then of eco-awakening. Are it describes this first conscious experience of belonging, that it's not just a rational thing. It's not like an ecological understanding. You haven't got a degree in ecology or you've read a good book about ecology. It's like your whole body feels it, and you can't act in the same way you did before, where you do not have a sense of the other than humans being alive and sentient. That means that they feel stuff and intelligent. It's like, it's profound, it's huge, it's like rocks your world basically. So it's not like, oh yeah, I get that humans are part of this food chain and all this. It's not that. So if you're thinking that, let that, maybe you're not convinced yet, and that's fine. You stay with us, and we're not trying to convince you. We're just telling you how we perceive it and see how it feels in your body, see how it lands. So
okay, so I'm feeling inspired to tell the story of my own ego awakening. I was living at a Zen center, which shall remain nameless, for 7 years. There was one of our retreats, which was a month long. We did that twice a year, and it was in August. And during this August practice period, we would sit from 6 in the morning until 9 at night, formally together. People could start as early as they wanted or as late as they wanted. They could sleep in the zendo if they wanted, but our formal period was from 6 in the morning till 10 at night, with sitting and walking, and we were eating formally in the zendo, and there was a work period and a rest period. And in the afternoons there was a talk, a Dharma talk. And I think that the talk had already happened, although I'm not sure. Maybe not. And we had 2 or 3 hours of meditation in the afternoon. And I had been working with a particular koan, a particular teaching story about a fish that leapt up over the dam, freed itself by leaping up over the dam into the upstream, into the wild waters. And at some point, something shifted inside of me, and I became the fish leaping upstream, and my whole consciousness shifted. Deep absorption, and just shifted into great spaciousness and kind of deep time mind, I would say. Deep time of the now, or the now of the deep time. And I started to laugh and cry at the same time. Kind of, I got the cosmic joke and was in this kind of absorptive, unitive consciousness. And but I was laughing and crying at the same time, and I was being loud, and in the zendo, of course, you were supposed to be silent. And I sat for periods in a row, and I remember I stayed put after everybody left the zendo, and then I tried to get up, and my feet had fallen asleep, and so I fell over. And the current co-abbot at the time found me kind of fallen over in the zendo, and asked me to leave the practice hall, asked me to leave the zendo, because I was apparently disturbing folks. Whatever, it doesn't really matter now, but in fact, it does matter, because it was this huge gift. Because I went outside in this state of consciousness that was not the everyday mind, and I laid down on the grass, and the sun, the golden sunlight of the afternoon, was streaming on me, and suddenly my unitive absorptive state became a unitive, physical, embodied, spiritual, psychological, emotional, physical oneness, unitive absorption with earth. And in that particular case, this first moment, it was the grass, and I had the feeling I could hear the grass growing, I could hear the grass singing. I could feel the consciousness of, or the awareness, the aliveness of grass in my own consciousness. And I wasn't allowed to go back into the zendo, and there wasn't any food for me because everybody was eating inside. And I didn't have anywhere to go or anything to do, and so I started to walk around the grounds, and I went down to the river. And it was this kind of golden sunlight drenched, incredible high desert afternoon. And this experience that I had had with the grass just kept deepening and deepening and expanding until it really took over my whole body. And every creature that I met, every plant or tree or furred or winged creature that I met, I had this same experience of, like, I was sharing consciousness with them. Like, my body could feel the being woven into the same web of life with them. And this went on for hours, and I picked wild herbs for my supper, and I stayed down there in this expanded, unified consciousness with all of Earth for quite some hours, and it fundamentally changed how I understood myself to be and who I understood myself to be. It changed me forever, and ultimately led to me partially leaving the Zen Center and doing the wilderness work and the nature-based work that I'm doing now with folks, because I wanted to support other people to have such kinds of consciousness expanding experiences, and most importantly, consciousness expanding into the web of life, to physically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually understand ourselves, experience ourselves as part of the ecological web of belonging. Yeah.
I feel like I've been on a little journey myself, just hearing that. Yeah, that kind of moving. And I hope that, yeah, people are getting that idea of what it actually feels like. It's a game changer to experience everything as alive and sentient. And so I live in Cymru, I live in Wales, and the language here, Cymraeg, has words that, because it's an old language, some would argue it's the oldest in Europe, it has words that are rooted in an old way of living, like our ancestors were indigenous once, and there are some words that link us to this belonging, and the sentience and the agency of other than humans. So words like Cynefin, which is kind of like, mostly you'd hear it talk about the sheep up on the mountains who know their place. Cynefin is a knowing of your place, and it's a kind of belonging in the place. You're woven into a place, if you like. And so sheep with Cynefin know, there aren't like fences on the mountain or walls right on the top. So, but they know, they stay in their place because they know their place and they're woven into it. But humans have Cynefin too. Yeah, and there's another expression which is milltir sgwâr, which is spoken of like you're from your square mile, but it's not just your human square mile. It's like you belong to the trees, and you belong with the trees and the rivers and the rocks and everything else. And yeah, and there's an expression in English which kind of moves towards it, which is kith and kin. And we often think of kith and kin these days as like two types of kin. It's like family and extended family, but the original Germanic word meant other than human, so not human. Kith was not human. So, but it was still, you were in a kind of familial relationship with trees and rocks and rivers and birds and everything else. So it still kind of is clinging on there, kind of surreptitiously hidden in English as well, this idea of kith and kin. So it's not something we don't know, but it's kind of hidden in our culture and lost in our culture, or buried. I wouldn't say it's lost, because we can find it. I'm one of those who's found it, and we've just heard your story of how you were found by your family, if you like. Let's give them the agency. We don't find them, they find us maybe, or something finds us. So I'm just really, want to bring that in, that this isn't like something new. This is something ancient that we're remembering, we're bringing back into being by, or it is being brought back into our being by something other than us, she says mysteriously. So I was wondering about, maybe we need to talk about culture a bit, about different cultures, we have touched on it, but like about, because what can happen is, I don't know how true this is for you, but when this eco-awakening happens, you've had this incredible experience of everything's alive and sentient and relating to me and I'm relating to it, and I am totally changed by it. And then you go back to your family, your normality in mainstream culture, in the power over culture, and everybody else is treating the others like they're things, they're inanimate, they're kind of like machines, if you like. You know, it's that mechanistic mindset that came in the Enlightenment, that everything, only humans have consciousness. I think it was Descartes that kind of was the philosopher who spoke about that. But it's like everything else is soulless and only humans have kind of got consciousness, and everything else is just a machine, and you can understand it through mathematics and science. And and so that kind of mindset took over. But before that, there was an understanding of soul, of the ensouledness of everything. And so you have your eco-awakening moment, and then, or yours wasn't a moment, it went on and on. But this experience, and then you go back into the mainstream culture and there is nothing there to support you to remember that. I mean, that's the impoverishment with which we live in modernity. And I don't want to diss modernity, of course. You know, it is part of the great unfolding of life. And, you know, it's not for me to say that it's bad or good. I can see that it causes quite a lot of trauma. I feel it, I have it. And I'm one of the luckier ones, being white and, you know, educated and whatnot. But but we live with an impoverishment, and so we come back, or we have these experiences, and then we come back and we're not met. And it makes me think about, I've been listening to Mary Evelyn Tucker and Brian Swim's book, The Journey of the Universe, which I really recommend. And they're talking about the universe. It's like the science of the universe, but how that actually translates into culture and our connection with life, and where we're at on these edge times that we're in, you know, like of close to mass extinction and climate collapse, and, you know, the composting of the current culture that I would say we're in, and you would say we're in probably, and I'm all for, and I'm trying to encourage along. I'm feeling sorry for us in a way, us modern humans, and our what's that poem? Our sense of being troubled guests on this planet, as opposed to we are this planet. We are, you know, in the same way that a body has organs, we're one of the organs of this planet, as this species has a particular job to do on this planet. We're not just beamed in to cause a mess and then die off. You know, we're doing something, and we're here to do something, and this planet has made us to do something, potentially, or, you know, the universe, if we, you know, because the planet is not separate from the universe, you know, Earth is not separate. So, but then I was just thinking, hey, but you know, we've got poetry, and I would say that, and I'm just thinking about, there's poetry that that tells stories, and it's one of those things that takes us to the threshold, like, for instance, Mary Oliver. I think I might read it, although I probably know it off by heart, because this was one of those moments that reinforced my own eco-awakening. I walked into somebody's house and they were smashing down a wall, and their house had been in disarray for a long time, and they'd written all over the wall, and this poem was on the wall, and when I read it, it was like the world stopped breathing or turning, and everything changed for me. And it was like so here it is. Wild geese. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Wow. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of rain are moving across the landscapes, over prairies and deep trees, mountains and rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. They're going home. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things.
Sometimes the only way to slow down the world is to step away, to walk the night roads, to follow the lonely pilgrim ways, to swim in the deep waters of despair. What keeps being forgotten is what you are here to remember. What keeps being lost is what you are here to find. What you have been given is the journey. The only question you must answer is this: have you become whom you were born to be?
So when I first started this work that we do, well over a decade ago, I went for a wander, and so I'd read these books by Bill Plotkin, and I had got this yearning of like, I need to be fully giving what I have for Earth. It was such a strong yearning in me, and kind of like there was a real grief that I wasn't. Yeah, I could feel that I was a bit dull in myself, or a bit not alive, because I wasn't finding a way to really offer myself or surrender. And so I'd been through this period of longing, and I'd come across these books, and I read this book, and I was like, wow, mind blowing. And I took myself away. I'd had several children at that point, and I hadn't had like any solo time for quite a long time. And I took myself away, and to the Brecon Beacons, if anybody knows them. And I went on this wander, as I described, didn't have an intention, was just wandering, as described in these books. And which is where I learnt to do it as an adult. I knew how to do it as a child. I did it all the time. But somehow education kind of beat it out of me, mainstream education, but I would say. And I was wondering, and I had a real dilemma at that time about where I was living, and I was drawn to this rock, this mossy rock, and I sat down, and it was November, so it was pretty squelchy. Sat down, and the river was full of really loud water. And I started off by talking to the rock and telling the rock about how I experienced it, how it looked, how it felt. I told it about its moss and how it felt, how it smelt. I even tasted it, I licked it, and was just there talking to the rock. And after I'd kind of like described rock to itself, I then started telling rock about myself and my dilemma that I was in, about where to live. And then all of a sudden, and I said something like, I was describing and saying, and I live in a community, because I did at the time, an intentional community. And I just heard, and I would say the rock said it, but it wasn't like I heard it like a voice. It was just a question was posed to me, which was, and what kind of community do you want to live in? And it completely broke my story of who I was open, because it was the first time I admitted that I didn't actually want to live in an intentional community. But more deeply than that, it was like a recognition of I am here to live in the greater earth community, and that was my work. That is my work. That's why I'm talking to you on this podcast. It's that, it's our birthright, and this is the impoverishment of the culture we're in, that we don't live in this birthright because we're not born into this innate belonging. We have to kind of offer ourselves to the world to find it again, like move out of our minds into our bodies and our imaginations and our feelings, so that we can reclaim a birthright that everything on the planet has, which is to be kind of living in the beautiful, enriching, life-enhancing and death-enhancing, because life and death are two sides of the same coin, web of life on this dear green and blue spinning ball that is part of the universe, which is part of a mystery that we don't understand. So, yeah.
What to Remember When Waking by David Whyte. In that first, hardly noticed moment in which you wake, coming back to this life from the other more secret, movable, and frighteningly honest world where everything began. In that first hardly noticed moment in which you wake, coming back to this life from the other more secret, movable, and frighteningly honest world where everything began, there is a small opening into the new day, which closes the moment you begin your plans. What you can plan is too small for you to live. What you can live wholeheartedly will make plans enough for the vitality hidden in your sleep. To be human is to become visible while carrying what is hidden as a gift to others. To be human is to become visible while carrying what is hidden as a gift to others. To remember the other world in this world is to live in your true inheritance. You are not a troubled guest on this earth. You are not a troubled guest on this earth. You are not an accident amidst other accidents. You were invited. You were invited from another and greater night than the one from which you have just emerged. Now, looking through the slanting light of the morning window toward the mountain presence of everything that can be. What urgency calls you to your one love? What urgency calls you to your one love? What shape waits in the seed of you to grow and spread its branches against a future sky? Is it waiting in the fertile sea, in the trees beyond the house, in the life you can imagine for yourself, in the open and lovely white page on the writing desk?
It's important, eco-awakening. I feel like saying more about why it's important, just to summarize that. I think we've spoken to, or if anybody's listening with their hearts, they'll feel how important we feel it is, but to actually speak that for me, it's important because the most important importance is that our current culture makes us think that we are in charge of everything. Like if you think about the creation story that pervades through modern Western culture, is one of like being given dominion. And that's not what our Indigenous ancestors knew, and that's not how healthy Indigenous cultures relate. It's one of reciprocity and even indebtedness. It's definitely not domination. So it's something, eco-awakening is what decolonizes us, is out of our idea that humans are some kind of exception. Like when we get into this whole discussion about saving the planet in rabbit ears, this idea that whatever we do, every single human has to stay alive. I'm not saying I wouldn't want anybody to die, not of course, but it's like, it's a strange place to start the conversation from without saying, and everybody else, and all the songbirds, and all the alligators, and all the, it's kind of like, that's what I mean by human exceptionalism. This idea that somehow we're a special case and we have special dibs on this planet. And it's kind of like, yeah, it's so woven into the way we think. We're dyed in the wool with this. It's like, I keep finding it. I've been doing this work for a long time, and it's like I keep finding it in me every day, this kind of idea that somehow I'm a special case. And so when we get into that special case scenario, of course, I mean, we're more familiar with it in racism or sexism, of like, there are some genders that are more important and more allotted more power than others, or some skin colors, or we're more used to recognizing it there than we are in around our speciesism, if you like. So it's important because the way we go about currently, I would say, having been an activist all my adult life, sometimes a direct activist, sometimes a pro-activist, I call it, where I tried to raise my kids differently and live in a different way from the mainstream, or less influenced by the mainstream, is that there's still this idea that we need to think what needs to be done and then do it. And where eco-awakening fits in to this is that it helps. It's the start of a big shift where instead of thinking we know what to do, we become humbled. And humble actually means to return to the topsoil, the humus layer of the soil. So we become humbled. And instead of thinking we know, we start to listen to what we're being told to do, because there is an intelligence that's bigger than us that already knows. And I mean, some of you have probably heard of the Gaia theory, and some of you, have probably heard of Indigenous cultures, and some of you may have a belief system that allows for an overarching principle, such as God or spirit or universe, or, I mean, we call it mystery. Personally, I say mystery because I don't know what it is, but so it is a mystery to me. And I don't see a guy with a beard, and I don't see a woman, a great goddess either. I see, if I see anything, I see the universe and stars. That's what I see. But it's like there's an overarching principle, and there's something unfolding, and we don't understand it. And I'm not dissing science. I love science, but it is like looking through a keyhole, really, because we can't see the whole picture, as far as I can tell, because there are things that science can't explain. So, when we even, well, I know lots of scientists and they would admit to that. So there are mysteries. So until everything is explained, then there is a mystery. So, and I tend to go along with my indigenous ancestors and those cultures that aren't destroying the planet, who tend to believe that there is some kind of organizing principle that is unfolding and it has an intelligence. And if we learn to listen, we can find out what we're here to do, not just use our strategic mind to work out what science says is the best thing to do. And I think this is the big shift that eco-awakening is the beginning of.
Thank you for joining us today and listening with your heart to this wandering way of conversation and dreaming and storytelling and poetry reading about an essential way of being human that is so needed for these times. If you're interested in joining us at Starter Culture for practices, invitations, in the future programs and webinars, storytelling events, or Belle's writings, please do check out our website at www.starterculture.net and join our newsletter that comes out about every 6 weeks, where you'll receive links to storytelling events, recordings, Belle's blog, and announcements about our upcoming programs. We feel you in the web, and we're so grateful that you are part of the community of humans listening in to Earth's dreaming. Please like, comment, and share this podcast wherever you listen, as well as pass on our newsletter to others who also long to create a human culture that knows its belonging to Earth community. We'll see you for part 2 next time on Co-Evolutionary Culturing, composting power over culture from the inside out.